There we go. I am now recording this talk. I'm gonna close some of my other things and head to the top of my slide deck. I've got a pretty big slide deck today because, let's see if I can grab up the results of the poll. I'm gonna go live. I'd like to share screen one, please. Section 1 voice. Go live. There we go. Okay, the video is now live. Feel free to click on my name and see what I'm looking at. Let's see. So yesterday I posted a poll on what people wanted, and 31 users said they want to get office hours style help with dog. Most people, however, 60% of users said they wanted to have it lecture style. I don't see a strong preference for either way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my whole slide deck today because that's what the majority says, and then from there I'm going to if I have time left over, I'll just help you guys with dog through the chat room, maybe even set up one-on-ones and all that. Any questions before I start? Self-plagiarism for people who want to use old submission. Okay, so I think we talked about this in Piazza, which is if you're using your old code, I mean, I guess you could. There's only a couple of ways to implement a read and implement cat in general, but if you're retaking this class, that means you might not have done very well in the previous class, so it might be worth rethinking how you did cat and trying to apply some newer approaches to making it better. For a certainty, just like copying, pasting the code from last year is 100% self-plagiarism. It'd be hard for us to check this, but just if you really want to learn this class, you would rewrite everything. Ilay. Maybe, but that's hard to pull off. Also, I am in voice chat if you want to talk to me directly. There we go. Okay. Any other pressing questions before I go? Give you guys 5 seconds to write them in or say it. I don't hear anybody.
Oh, I have a quick question about like closing files. If you get an error for closing a file, like how should you handle that?
What kind of error?
Well, I just noticed that like the close function, it produces like a -1 if if the file didn't close or something like that.
So
Then if you try to close it again, it'll just give you the same error, right? So how would you kind
so
of deal with that?
usually the only way close would actually throw an error, in my experience, is that you try to close a file that was never opened in the first place. So throw an error that way. The other way to do it is to basically shred the data on disk while the file pointer is still active. But we're not
Okay.
going to test for that, obviously. That'd be a really, really out of left field type of test.
Okay. Cool.
All right, cool. Okay, we're going to start. So today, this is going to be the primer. We're going to start with a primer for assignment 1. You guys are finishing up assignment 0 as of tomorrow, if I recall correctly. And assignment 1 is going to be a lot different than assignment 2. Assignment 1 is going to be a much more involved project, and it's going to really, really require you guys to start designing stuff because there's going to be a server, there's going to be a way to communicate the server. You have to make sure all this stuff is going to be, communicating the way you want it to be, and there's a lot more moving parts with the HTTP server rather than the CAT program. The other thing you have to know is you have to understand how a server works, what a system is. This is not your normal standard coding assignment that you've been taking in UCSC. I think Peter's done a very, very good job explaining to you guys what a system is. So this hopefully should not be news to you guys. I also want to give you guys a couple of hints inside this talk about how to get started with the program, some starter code. And I also want you guys to succeed and reward you guys for coming to section. Supposedly there's 112 people online in this Discord right now, and I see a grand total of 18 people inside here. The spec is not out. It's coming out hopefully today. We are going to be trying to get it out as fast as possible. But as you guys notice, Git is causing us problems right now, and that's probably a much bigger pressing issue than getting the spec for assignment 1 out. All right. So, quick recap. What is a system? A system is a set of things working together as parts of a mechanism or interconnecting network. So the thing is basically your server software and your client software, right? Like your C program running in a window, or it could be curl. The network is your communication layer that allows your client to communicate with the server. Fortunately, you guys are not re-implementing the communication layer. You're just using it. That's going to make this a lot easier. I think Daniel and Clark said, if you guys do not want to re-implement TCP, fortunately, we're not asking you guys to do TCP. This is not a networking class. We're asking you guys to use TCP. And the thing about working together is that your client and your server must individually contribute to a grander purpose. A server really can't do anything on its own until a client talks to it. And certainly a client is pretty useless without a server to talk to it. By having both of these things talk to each other and communicate, you guys can create the effect of a server client system. Our web server is basically a service that just responds to a request, right? In real life, it's like I ask a waiter for a glass of water, and he or she returns with a glass of water. The thing that we're going to have you guys implement in this assignment is get and put functionality. You'll be getting data from and putting data into a web server. So it's like Dropbox, right? You get to like upload something to the server. Eventually you can ask for it back. You get a copy of it back. You don't necessarily delete it from the remote server. The only inconvenience is that unlike a drag and drop type of interface, you guys are going to have to be building this interface yourself through the command line, of course. Designing the web server, on the other hand, is much different than Dog. So you're going to have two agents on your computer are going to be doing very different things, right? It's not like you have a server already built in. You have the components you need to build the server. You just don't have it already. Socket programming is hopefully a brand new thing for a lot of you guys. It's going to be a lot different than your standard way of coding, so you're going to have to read up on the documentation on how these sockets work and use this documentation to correctly implement socket communications. You also have to keep in mind that your client and your server are going to be completely asynchronous to each other, so you can't just expect your server to you can't just expect to call a function. Your server knows that, the client has called this function. You're going to have to actually communicate through a very specific set of rules. And that's the fourth point. Got a very strict communication standard. You have to follow it. Not following it will probably involve a lot of pain for you guys so far. Any questions? I hear no questions. All right, onwards. Some of the things that I found last quarter, people doing Dog, and they will have these problems when they did Dog, and it just gets amplified when they're doing the HTTP server. The first thing is you guys made your design document after you coded it. You can get away with that in Dog. You cannot get away with that in HTTP server. A lot of times people stop doing their design while they're coding. If you're coding, you figure out that your design document is no longer valid, it's a good thing to stop, put in comments in your code like what you figured out that was insufficient, and update your documentation as you're going on. There's also people who have communicated with me that it is, Tuesday now? Yeah, they haven't started a design document for Dog. You can definitely hack out the design document for Dog in less than a day and turn it in, but it's just a really bad habit. I can guarantee you that doing any of these above for assignment 1 will cause you to not complete it in time. We're giving you a lot of extra time compared to last time, but we also gave students extra time in last quarter's offering, and they still didn't run out of time because they did not do their design. Any questions? Nope. Going onwards. Okay. Second quick recap. Everything is a file, which means that a lot of things are read and written to all the time. This includes buffers, sockets, and files. You can treat sockets like buffers and files. So if you think about it this way, if a sandbox is your file, you got yourself your buffers and your readers and all that, and you can scoop your sand from the sandbox to your home. Except this time we've got ourselves a brand new magical portal called a socket that we're going to throw our bucket of sand in, and it will come out the other side of that portal. Basically, our portals are networking layer. The thing about what I want to tell you guys about is that the thing that we're going to have you guys do is HTTP. So this is me just telnetting Wikipedia on port 80, which is the standard HTTP, socket port. And what I get is a request body this is the request body you see over here in red, right? And it's get the wiki main page using HTTP to communicate, and our host is Wikipedia. And we get the response header over here, which is the response saying, "Hey, I heard your request. This is some information about me. Before I send in the rest of my response, here's some information," right? And then the response body down here in green is the actual data that your web browser will display. And of course, once it's done, it will close it, but the server will close the connection because it doesn't have to keep it open. This is effectively what you guys are doing. Of course, you're not going to be doing everything inside here. You're certainly going to be doing a response header, which is HTTP/ one point something, a code, an OK or failed or something like that. You're going to have to implement a request header, and you're also going to, of course, have to implement a way to parse this response body. Question: is it okay to reuse our design documentation if we take it as that self-plagiarism too? That is technically self-plagiarism. I would rewrite it if I were you, because a lot of when I remember grading the fall quarters ones, a lot of the design documents in the first assignment were very, very poorly written. So I want to take this time to practice writing good design documents. We're here to learn anyway. All right, so when you send out a request, you're going to basically send out a string, and it's going to look like something like this. It's called a get header, right? The header is your request message to the remote server, and it looks like this. It says get for the first thing in all capitals. There's a space and an up to 27 character long HTTP string. Before we have asked it to be exactly 27 characters long. Now we're going to say it's going to be up to 27 characters long. The last thing it's going to end is a HTTP/1.1. Note, there is a space at the end over here and a space down here. I couldn't get it to display, but there's actually a carriage return and a new line at the end over here. All of your header messages will end with a /r/n/r/n, aka carriage return, new line, carriage return, new line. You can use this to parse your headers both on the client and on the server side. Fortunately, you only have to do this for the server side, but this is how you can figure out where your header ends and where your message body begins. Somebody's mic is on. Does anybody have a question? Nope. No questions? All right. Okay, questions. Let's see. If our code works with Pastel 10, we expect to start from scratch. Is it possible we use code to set ourselves? Also, how do we set ourselves? We use page for various places. Okay. There is no way for us to check all the files for self-plagiarism. We're not going to do that. I'm just going to say that if you are retaking this class, that means you did not do well in the first iteration in fall, right? So it would be a bad idea for you to just reuse the code because A, it's been a long time. You might not know why you wrote that code that way. And B, it's probably a better idea to learn how to redo the code and make it better, right? There's like a whole school of thought. I'm going to go on a wild tangent right now. In Japan, there are these porcelain vases, right? And the Japanese porcelain vases are incredibly beautiful, but the process of them making it involves them making a prototype first and smashing it into pieces, rebuilding it, and then making another one using the knowledge gained from smashing it in the first place. If you really want to learn, I highly recommend you guys to just rewrite the code from the beginning. It's going to teach you better programming habits, maybe show you what you have done wrong, and also just give you more practice in coding. Ostensibly, you're in this class so you can get yourself a good CS degree and get a good job. And in the real world, the more experience you have, the better you'll do. I hope that answers your question. I'm not trying to be a butt here about don't copy your own code. I just really want you guys to learn. And oftentimes, just rewriting your own programs with a new design is the best way to do it. Just personally, I've rewritten my own personal research code 3 or 4 times now, starting from empty text documents. No problem. All right, I'm going onwards. Okay, so this is a put header. And the put header is going to be something that's slightly different. So it's going to say put at the beginning, right? It's got your up to 27 character long HTTP day, HTTP/1.1. On the next line below it, you're going to have a content length. Your content length is in bytes. So see this over here? This format has to say content length, and it has to say some number. It could be 0. Right? You could be putting an empty file. Hint, hint. That's something you're going to have to take care of. But also remember, there is a carriage or 2 new lines and 2 carriage returns at the end. That's just part of all headers. All good so far? Any questions? Kayla Beeman, could you please mute your mic, please? I see a person with their mic unmuted. I don't want to go onwards because I hear interference in that one. Thank you. All right. Cool. Head is going to be a new thing you're going to have to do. Head is just getting the response header, right? AKA head. It's going to be almost the exact same thing as get, except you got to have, head at the beginning. So if you take a look back at this picture over here, this is your response header, right? So here in this particular example, you're getting the main page, so you can obviously get a response body, but if you were to change this to be head, you would just get the response header. This is good for just getting the information of the server, so it's nothing that's terribly difficult to implement, but it's a great thing. We want you guys to implement as many of these as possible. There are other HTTP requests out there, but these are the three that we want you guys to implement. Head, put, and get. Any questions so far? Nope. All right, onwards. Resource names. Your resource names are going to be up to 27 characters long and must consist of only upper and lowercase characters of the English alphabet. I hear somebody's mic on. I'm gonna start muting people. Boop. There we go. All right. Perfect. Let's see. So it has to consist of up 27 characters, upper and lowercase of the English alphabet, digits 0 through 9, and dash and underscore. There are 64 possible characters that can be used. If the request includes an invalid name, the server must fail the request and respond accordingly. You have to keep in mind, how do we detect if any of these bad things exist? There's two ways to do it. The first way to do it is say, if any of these names has to be within these 64 possible characters, or the second way to do it is, if it finds a bad character, fail the request. This probably should be done as a function. It's a great idea to do this as a function and probably write it externally to your HTTP server. Onwards. Response header is going to look something like this. It's going to start with HTTP/1.1, your response code, so 200, 404, 500, whatever one is that. It's going to say OK. It's going to get exactly one new line and a content length of 0. The content length can be different depending on what you're sending out in the first place. So if you're doing get, right? Get requests a file from the server, so your content length from the server is going to come back. It's going to be the size of that file in bytes. If you're doing head or put, it's going to be a lot different. It's actually going to be 0 because there is no response body. Again, keep in mind all valid headers will end at the /r/end, but the new line, the single new line, is actually the split between the top of the response header and the bottom of the response header. What does /r mean? /r is a carriage return. So it just says it's like the end of a line, while end is the actual printing of the new line. All right, status codes. So these are the status codes we want you guys to implement. 200, 201, 400, 403, 404, and 500. So think about what situations could happen to create an OK file, basically something worked correctly. There's going to be created, so a new file has been created. Bad request, aka a malformed header, for example. 403 forbidden, such as, trying to open a file that you do not have read-write permissions to. Not found, and internal server error. Internal server error, you could implement, like try to intentionally crash a server or something like that, but I don't think you necessarily have to find every possible thing for internal server error. I have a list of things that could cause internal server that we could test for, but I don't have it in this slide deck. So somebody should remind me to actually write that down somewhere. Will there be not valid headers we have to check? Yes, we will be testing for invalid headers. Like if I put an empty header or something like that. Or a invalid HTTP name. How do you guys get this thing to work together? We're going to be implementing TCP into your HTTP web server. The TCP mechanism basically works something like this. You create the socket, you identify the socket. Babak, could you please mute? Let me see. How do I... Oh, I'd prefer not to kick you. There we go. Okay, that worked. How do I mute other people? Because this is the third time this has happened. Let's see.
I think you can click on their name if you have admin privileges.
Yeah, I have
Right-click on
admin
them.
privileges, but I can permanently mute them. That's the problem. I don't want to
I don't think there's a
permanently
way to
mute them.
temporarily mute someone. I think you permanently mute them.
Let's see, mute. Yeah, but that just mutes you. But then I have to unmute you later if you guys want to.
Oh wait, we have permission to mute each other, so they can unmute themselves.
Yeah, I don't want to permanently mute. That's the problem.
But they have the
only
ability to
option
unmute
permanentmute.
themselves, though. They can. I can right-click my unname and unmute myself.
Yeah, I'll go play with those permissions later. But let's finish this slide deck first. Yeah, so don't worry about this particular thing. Read this for your own benefit. I'm just teaching you guys how this mechanism works at a high level. There's going to be starter code that simplifies these steps. So the first thing you have to do is create the identified socket, right? So you actually there's a syscall called socket. And it's really cool because you can put in a IP address, a type, which is a stream, and there's so various TCP protocols, so the last parameter is 0. Think about this. A server FD, which is a socket, right? Push talk OP. We can perma mute each other, unperma mute ourselves. Okay, I gotta fix those permissions. Please don't perma mute each other, but yeah, I gotta fix those permissions. Server FD is a file descriptor, right? Remember how I said everything about Unix and Unix is a file? Suddenly, your socket is basically just like a file. You can read and write from it. But you got to do a couple more things first. So the other thing you have to do is assign a name to a socket, right? It's like assigning a phone number to a line to process calls. So with an open socket, you have to give it, like, say, an IP address and a port. And this is where you get your sock address, aka your IP address, and of course the length of the address. The system called for that is called bind. You bind the socket to an address. Now you can start communicating with it. Bind has a lot of parameters. This thing, you don't really have to necessarily worry about binding to a specific address for this assignment. We're allowing you to bind to any available address. It just makes things easier. Prior to this, we had you guys bind to a specific address, but even like modern things like video games, they don't have you bind to a specific address anymore. So it's a bit old, outdated, and it's just unnecessary complexity for you guys to implement. This is what an socket address actually looks like. It's got a family, it's got a port, it's got an address, which is the address of your socket. All this stuff can be created using set sock options. This is just for your own information what it looks like in the nitty-gritty details. Once you have opened up your port and bound it to an address, you can start listening in on this thing. You got yourself a socket you can listen to, and every time you get something inside there, the return of listen will change. That means you can read in from the socket and get your data. What happens if you get a ton of inbound connections? Do you need something to queue them up? Maybe? I don't know. You don't have to actually necessarily create your own queue to do this thing. However, it's just something to keep in mind because now I think in this time we're only testing for one request at a time. We're not going to be doing multiple requests at the same time. Is there a video somewhere? I'm recording this thing. You can click on my name to watch the video live right now. Accept is the thing that actually accepts this connection. It grabs the first connection request off the queue of pending connections and it creates a new socket for that connection. This is how you accept requests from your client, and then your server. Every time it accepts your request, it should respond to it accordingly. Accept or listen, return different codes. This will let you react correctly to what comes in. I'm gonna have to leave it up to you guys to figure out how to react to it, because there's going to be different ways you guys are going to have to react to it. Figuring out what this does is going to be part of your design. Read demand pages for this thing, read the response codes, and then maybe in your design talk about like, oh, if I get this particular code, I should do this, this, or this. This is how you guys are going to also be able to implement the correct response headers. Any questions so far?
Just one. Is this video going to be posted? Because I missed a bit of it.
Yeah, it's going to be posted. I'm recording it right now. I'm 24 minutes in. My internet's a bit fucky right now. Excuse the language. So I'm going to try to post it by the end of day. Of course, these slides are also going to be posted too.
And the video will be posted on Piazza in the pinned section videos.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, I'm going to try to get it up as fast as possible, but because this video is going to be a bit long, I'm going to blame Comcast. They have slow upload speeds. Okay, so now we have a random
Comcast is devil.
right? So we could read and write the data to the socket now. So you can read data, right? So, oh, hey, the server gave me back stuff. I'm going to read it. And I can write stuff to it. This stuff should be really familiar to you guys. It's literally dog, except you guys have a different file pointer, and your file pointer is going to have specifically formatted data to tell you how to respond to it. So doing really well on dog is going to help you do really well on this assignment. Okay, also, when you're done, close the socket. Don't leave a mess. It's just like freeing data. You should close the socket. Yeah, it sounds like dog. That's because it should. Other system calls that you might need. So this is a list. It's going to be in the assignment spec. You're going to need socket, bind, listen, accept, connect, send, receive, open, read, write, close. There's going to be a lot of new stuff for a lot of new system calls that you guys are going to have to learn. Use demand pages. Also, to parse your headers, you could use dprintf for printing to a file descriptor and scanf for parsing data in a string, like a buffer. Because you guys are going to be having to parse this data, you should learn how to parse this data external to your HTTP server. Like, for example, create a clone of dog, let it read in a file that looks like an HTTP header, and figure out how to correctly parse those things before you start coding the rest of HTTP server. Learning how to parse these things correctly will save you a whole bunch of headaches later down the line. Also, you should not use any other calls for operating on files or network sockets, so like file pointers. You're not allowed to use the C++ or C socket libraries, except for, of course, the system calls. So, yeah, you're implementing this all on your own from nothing. Any questions? All right, going on.
Could you repeat the last part about what you said? Saving yourself a headache by using dog to do what?
So create a clone of dog, do dog on a file, but the file contains stuff like an HTTP header, right? And figure out how to parse that data inside your buffer such that you can, correctly differentiate the header data from the message body data. And also keep in mind, you still have a 32 kilobyte, maximum buffer size. So you're gonna have to work with that while you're parsing your data.
Okay, so clone dog and call the clone on a file that has an HTTP header, and then figure out how to parse that data.
Yeah, and then once you know how to parse that data, then update your design based on that, and use those experiences to then add that functionality to your HTTP server.
Because dog will obviously put that out to standard out, and then you can see all the fields in the HTTP header, and then from there you can figure out how to parse.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. Some people mistakenly destroyed their old version of dog doing this thing. So, just clone versions of dog. Have a backup of dog. Don't destroy your original version of dog if you can't. You shouldn't be, because everything should still be on Git.
Yeah, should have Git. Yeah.
Yep. Is Ask2 already up? What? I'm confused about that question. Oh, assignment 2. No. We're trying to post it. We're having Git issues right now. Yeah. We're gonna get it posted as soon as possible. That was an epic mistypo. Okay, here's some starter code. All right, it's done. We're done. I'm kidding. I'm gonna post these slides. Don't have to write down everything right now, but this is the starter code. Feel free to use it. You don't have to cite it. We're going to be handing this out. It's just in my slides right now. I also have stuff about connecting with a client too. Hopefully we can also post this file with the spec. Otherwise, you can also look at this for your own purposes. Start the HTTP server today if you're so inclined. Yeah, don't worry too much about having to write this down right now. I will post these slides soon. How do you test your server? You're going to be using curl. Curl is a program that transfers data from or to a server using one of these protocols. We're only really caring about HTTP. We're going to use the curl to transfer some of your data from a client, aka your terminal, to a running HTTP server on your machine. So the workflow would be run the server in one terminal window, run curl in a different terminal window, and then watch for results on the curl window. In the most recent versions of Ubuntu, you should have it, but in case you don't have it, there's these two commands here you have to run to install curl. It should be part of NetTools, but just in case it's not there, these are the instructions on how to install it. How long we're going to have to do this new assignment 2? I think it's going to be a teensy bit more than 2 weeks. But I believe 2 weeks is the minimum that we're intending on giving it to you guys right now. Next step. Get. So this is the command that you want to run to test get. You run curl, right? You can do -s, that just silences everything. You don't have. You can also do -v to get everything verbose. -s is just something that I use personally, but if I want to debug stuff, I use -v. The next command is the URL of the server to connect to with port. So 127.0.0.1 whatever port you wish to set is going to be the address you're going to connect to. It's probably going to be more likely to be localhost, because you're going to be running everything locally. You do -- request target to tell curl they want to get this name, not the name from the URL, and then your HTTP name of the item that you're looking to get. Any questions? All right. Put is different. You're going to run curl, V for verbose if you want to. This is 100% optional. And you do -T. Oh, is Ken lagging? Do you guys have issues with the stream right now?
No. I do have a question though.
No.
Okay. Yeah. What is your question?
The name, is that the path of the file, or
Yes, this request target over here is going to be a path of the file. This is currently assuming that wherever directory you're running curl in has. Oh Jesus! What was that? That was very loud. Yeah, both me and my wife were currently doing both. We're both actually doing Zoom calls right now, and it's really putting a strain on our network.
Should we tell Aiden that he's not able to listen?
Aiden? I don't know. Maybe he's just here watching the thing. Oh well. I mean, if he eventually figures it out, he'll eventually figure it out. Otherwise, I mean, the video is going to be posted eventually. Continuing onwards. Yeah, so the last thing is going to be a request target. This could be a absolute file path totally, or relative file path. Is this particular, just to fit it on the slide, just assumes that your file is in the same directory that you're running curl. Head, on the other hand, is much simpler. Curl -I for the HTTP header in the output, -x for custom requests, and tell curl that we want to use the head method, and of course the URL of the server they want to connect to with port. It's very straightforward. Here's a link on how to use curl. This thing could also tell you how to test servers with curl, so I really recommend you guys to take a look at this link. It's really useful. Final remarks before I end. Design. This is going to be an assignment that's going to test your designing skills. Make your designs very clear enough that you can describe it to a middle schooler. Literally, Eli 5, this design, if you can't describe it to a middle schooler, that means your design is too complex and you might not understand it the way you can implement it. When you're describing things, make it in clear, grammatically correct English, and go back to your designs if they don't work or need updating. Like seriously, keep your designs open on another screen, write your notes inside there. It doesn't have to necessarily be grammatically correct the moment you write it in, but once you implement it and figure out that everything is working, correct the grammar so you know exactly what your train of thought was. You should also try to simulate the design on paper or in your head. Think about like if it's going to work. Drawing stuff on paper is also very good. That's why a lot of coding interviews are done on whiteboard. And also, please go to section times if you need help. Ask us clear and direct questions. Try not to ask us, this is broke, I don't know why. Do ask something like, I made a socket connection correctly, but I can't bind to address. Any ideas? Feel free to screenshot code and send it to us in private messages or private Piazza posts. Again, rules still say do not post your entirety of your code on Piazza or Discord. Use curl. Last thing before I end this slides, there's only 300 students in Discord. Most people don't really talk all that much. So please tell others that if they need help, we're online like all the time. Like there's what's his name? Daniel, Clark. I'm trying to be on as much as possible when I'm not doing research. We're online a lot. We really want to help you guys. If you don't get help until the last moment, I'm gonna say it's gonna be a struggle bus. And with that, that's the end of my slides. Good luck and Godspeed. Any questions before I end these slides?
Are you doing any design doc reviews, possibly?
Today?
Yeah.
I guess I could. Let's see. How much time do I have left? I've got 25 minutes left on my section technically. So if you want to, just private message me and say I want a design doc review with some, with your link to your design document.
Okay, cool.
Do you think you could answer a really stupid question about the current assignment 0?
Okay.
What percentage of the complete set of tests that you guys have waiting in the wings is the basic 8 tests that are currently on GitHub?
I cannot reveal that.
Oh.
It's a number. Okay, fine. I'll say this. It's a number between 0 and 100.
Ah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question about dog.
Mhm.
When you're reading from standard in, is the warn just the dash, like the file that you're supposed to be running the warn from? Is that supposed to be like a dash or?
I do not understand. Could you clarify that question?
Yeah. Okay. So like the warn function, how it takes in like a string.
Uh-huh.
Is that string a dash for standard in? Like.
Why are you using?
Oh yeah, that's actually a good question. Yeah, I had the same question. So like when we're using warn for like cases where we're handling a file, we can just put argvx into warn, right? And it'll return the correct warning. It'll set the error no correctly, and then it'll return that error no, and then that error no will get printed out. But if we're using, if there's a case where we're handling standard in to standard out, like in the case where the argument is a dash, or if there's no arguments at all, like what should warn take? Is that what you're asking, man? Is that the?
Yeah.
That's what I'm. If I recall correctly, it's literally just a character pointer, like a string, literally. Like if you take a look at my live stream right now, it's literally just this. It's just a string.
Yeah.
I think he's asking more specifically, like, it takes in a string, but what should we put as the string? Like, would the single dash be, like, sufficient enough?
Yeah.
Because that is technically, like, the input. Or do we have to, like, say standard input?
If you test, like, if you do the command head
Actually,
less than cat.
The better question is, why are you using warn? Warn should be used to do like error printing and all that, not printing out to standard out directly. You should be using write.
Oh no! I'm saying for like checking if it like when there's an error with like printing.
Right, because there could be an error in the case where you're in dog where you're handling standard in to standard out. Like there could be possibly an error with the input that is taken in from standard in and then supposed to be copied back out to standard out or written back out to standard out. In that case, we would have a warning, which means we would use the warn function. And I think a lot of us are confused about what you put as an argument to the warn function in that case.
Okay. Okay, that makes more sense. So
just put an empty string and that covers it, because warn function also creates and generates a output error for you.
What?
Like empty string. Like seriously, empty string. Put an empty string there.
I mean, yeah, it's whatever way you want to do it. When we test, it's going to be like say we want to like cat out like a incorrect file, right? Your program shouldn't crash. That's what we're going to test for. It also shouldn't print out anything. If anything, if it causes an error, like you're trying to print out a directory, we're going to be detecting whether or not you are printing out bytes or an error, which should be created using warn. We can
Right. Yeah. So I did that. So we don't really have to worry about warns for like standard in to standard out or something.
No, you don't have to worry about that. The thing you have to worry about is correctly catching the errors and not like saying it's not an error.
Okay.
Okay. So I mean, like in the case, because I was in Daniel's section and he was like, okay, here's what cat generates when there's an error coming from standard in to standard out, and he used the head. He used the command head left arrow parens cat, and that generated an input output error, and cat did indeed return the error, input output error. That's what it returned. Now on my system, I've had a hard time recreating that. I can't use that command for some reason. It doesn't with cat. It doesn't return the same error. But from what the gist of what he was telling us was that we are going to test for like errors coming from standard in and then being written back to standard out. So I think that's why a lot of us have been like worrying about what we put as an argument to the warn function if there's an error from standard in that is supposed to be written back to standard out. And so you're basically saying, don't worry about the type of error that's returned. Just make sure you're returning an error of some sort.
Yeah.
Or maybe I should say we shouldn't worry about the error message that's returned.
Yeah, you shouldn't worry about the error message that's returned. We're going to be, we're not able, it would be unfair for us to look for a specific error message, but as long as you're returning an error, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like you know, like doing that head cat thing, right? It shouldn't like work. It should say it's an error of some sort.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so, oh, sorry.
I was just wondering, is it okay to have like, because you were saying the buffer earlier.
Mhm.
Right now I have it as like, pointer to characters, and then I did like dynamically allocated memory, and by using malloc, is that okay or?
That's more like statically allocated, but yes, that's fine.
Okay, because I heard somebody saying like chars weren't okay or something like that.
It's not good practice because like because what you're reading in may not be specifically characters. It could be binary data like images or music or videos.
Okay.
I mean, you can get away with it. It's just that it's bad. It's bad practice.
Okay.
So I submitted like a couple of days ago, and I ran that command that I think the submission link had, right? That was supposed to give us the ID for the commit, right?
Mhm.
Is there a way to check that that's like good to go?
I don't have access to that. I think I do, but I don't know how to get access to that. So that might be a good question for another TA, because I'm more doing like the examination creation and running Discord stuff right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know which TA?
Try Daniel, I think, or Michael. If anything, you can also directly ask Peter. He's online right now. I mean, I'm not too sure. Maybe if they can enlighten me, that would work too. Any other questions?
Okay,
Yeah.
so so I have a question about, so in the spec that we were given, if cat takes in like 2 dashes, so like cat space dash space dash, that would imply 2 user inputs.
We're not testing
It
multiple
says-
dashes.
Okay, you're not testing multiple dashes.
It becomes a very interesting way to test and to implement it, and we're not doing that.
Okay.
You said that chars aren't the best practice for the type of variable that you read in. What would you use instead?
Unsigned integers, 8 bits unsigned integers, but basically unsigned characters.
Okay, and then you just convert that into a char if it's a text file.
Yeah.
Or you
Or you don't have
Or
to
do you
convert it; you're
not-
just writing it out again.
not even have to. You can just write it. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything, man. It'll just dump it. It'll do exactly what you're expecting.
Mhm.
Okay. Cool.
I mean, the thing is, like, if you think about it this way, right? You could technically use an integer if you really wanted to, a 4-bit integer, or 4-byte integer, right? It would totally work the same way. It's just that we're trying to teach you guys efficiency, good memory usage, and all that stuff that in the modern day of computing you don't have to worry too much about, but in old times and even still in sometimes today you just have to worry about it. What's the problem with multiple dashes? It's hard to test. It's hard to test and it's hard to implement.
Is there any update on the personal responsibility form that he was talking about in lecture yesterday?
Didn't he upload it?
Did he?
I'm just
But
checking.
I'll check. I'll check.
I swear he uploaded. Anyway, I gave it to Peter and he was taking care of it, so I know it's in his hands right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So I got 15 more minutes.
So for the write-up that we need to hand in with the assignment, I find a hard time like understanding what the question is. Can you explain more about it?
Let me pull that up. How is the code for handling a file differ from that of handling standard input? What is this concept an example of?
I mean, the first part I know how to deal with, but the second part, is it kind of related to the lecture sources or something like
Yes,
that?
it is. It's a one-word answer.
Okay, I got it.
The answer starts with an A.
Thanks.
Hey Ken, for the design question I had, like, are you gonna have time? Because I have a meeting at 2 as well.
I've been busy all morning. Maybe I have time. I'll try to make time for it, but let me see. If people are stopping to ask question 155, I'll try to do a private message call with you and see if we can get that hashed out correctly. But I'm pretty booked today. I'm sorry.
Our design document for this assignment doesn't need to be. I mean, there's a lot. Like I was taking a look at the third post in your like making a good design document Piazza post. The third link, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that one seems to be like the most regular. Obviously, you say on there like this is more closer to what we're expecting from you, and so that was the one that I chose to look at, or I chose to look at more thoroughly. And there's actually, there's quite a few. Obviously, there's 4. The data design, architectural design, interface design, and component level design parts of that spec, and so. There are a few of those that are like, we don't really even need to say anything for this assignment, right? Like interface design, like we didn't design an interface, obviously, for Dog. It's just the command line. I mean, it's just terminal, right? I mean,
yeah, pretty much. I mean, we leave it up to you for like, interpreting like how to make a good design document, but like, understandably, you have to talk about the data structures you use, the algorithms you use, a little bit of pseudocode and diagrams is always a plus.
Okay. I mean, again, like for this assignment, how in depth are you guys expecting us to go for the design doc?
We haven't fully created the rubrics yet. Oh yeah, I have an update for all you guys about how we're grading all this stuff. But like, the rubric is it understandable? Can we read it and understand what you're trying to do? Does your declarations on how you're going to be solving the problem, aka pseudocode, and your diagrams make sense? And if so, overall, does it help another person reading it understand and potentially re-implement your program?
Got it. Okay, so just have some clear pseudocode in there, and then
yeah, and describe it really clearly.
Okay,
English,
and then
of course.
And for these 4 models that are recommended, I mean, the 4 different sections of the 4 different components of the design spec that are mentioned in that document that I was looking at, are there a couple of them that we can just kind of ignore, like interface design? I mean, do we need to really say anything about that, or?
I don't think so. Like the stuff that's obviously like the performance stuff, interfaces, that you can just straight up ignore it.
Okay, cool. Like, so we're basically just more focused on just really number 2, like architectural design kind of.
Yeah, that's the really important stuff. I mean, like even like assignment 1, like the HTTP server, that's going to be like the biggest section in your entire thing.
Okay, got it. Okay, and then data design. The first one is data design. Like, we're not.
Yeah, but you do have like a data structure, your buffer, right? And why are you doing a buffer with unsigned int?
Got it.
Why is it 32
bytes?
Got it.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have a question about our submissions. One of the TAs says it's not like the best way to do it, but you can have your test files in the repo.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to get docked off for that, are we? Because I was passing it between.
I don't want to
IBM
answer this because it could open up Pandora's box of like people just willy-nilly dumping test files into there.
Okay.
But just please don't include test files.
Okay. I won't next time, but I submitted like early.
That's fine. Just keep in mind, please don't submit them. It's not so much as like it's going to break the functionality of the program. It's just that we're running on basically a hamster wheel server right now. Please don't fill it up with junk.
Okay, sorry.
Any other questions? Extra credit return. Yes, we are. Initially, we forgot to take out those lines, but then we left it in the syllabus, and we're like, fine, we'll do it. You guys get extra credit. I think it's like a couple of points extra per up to 3 days before you submit. Anything beyond giving you over 90% will not count. Yeah, +1 for every 8 hours, max 72 hours. If you have a score above 90, it maxes out at 90. So you can't get like 110%, for example.
I see. So if we haven't submitted yet, there's no extra credit. Like we would have had to submit like 2 days ago.
Yeah. Actually, well, no, it's due tomorrow. You have 24 hours extra credit, potentially, if you submit like right now.
Okay. Fair enough.
Is that with the extension for 24 hours?
Sorry, what was that?
He also extended the assignment.
Yeah, that's right. He just.
Oh, did he? Did we extend
Yeah,
it?
because of the server going down last night, he said on Piazza that he would extend it 24 hours.
Great. I don't have an answer for that. I don't want to make an answer for that because now I don't want to be like I'm the arbitrator of giving out extra credit points. I'll talk to Peter about that. Oh, yeah, update. We got a giant, like 10 group tutors who are also going to be helping us grade. These are undergrads who have taken this class before, either Harrison's or Ethan's class. They all did really well in the class. Hopefully, once we get everything rolling, they will also be in Discord. They'll hold their own tutoring sessions, and you guys get 10 more people to also ask questions. Who have also done these assignments, by the way. So that's hopefully going to help you guys out.
That's dope. Yeah, thank you. Thank you to you and thank you to them for sure.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Uh-huh.
Right now, I have 2 different functions, one for reading in for standard in, and then one reading in for a file.
Mm-hmm.
Should I compress those into one function, or is it okay to have 2?
That's up to you, man. Every person's design is going to be different. I can't really say whether or not it's correct or not.
Okay. So I won't be marked down for that?
No, we're not going to grade on code correctness this time. It doesn't make much sense. Of course, if you put everything into main, I will wave a finger at you and send you an angry picture of Mr. Ascetti in your private messages, because that is terrible programming habit.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I've got one private call to do. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask me in general, lecture, assignment 1, whatever you guys want to do. I'm going to end the live stream and end the recording. I'll upload as fast as possible. See you guys later.
See you.